What's up everyone, it's Johnny from Transparency Cleaning Services. Today I wanted to share with you a few videos just to highlight the points of leaking gutters, the damage it can actually cause, because I know you must think sometimes, does water really cause that much damage? Well, you're going to find out in this video. But we're going to go over signs and symptoms, what you can look out for in your property, and these helpful tips can save you really costly repairs. We're talking foundations, rotting fascia boards, all these things that cost thousands of pounds to put right, when a simple clearing the gutters, sorting out a leak can avoid all of that. And today I wanted to show you an extreme example of what happens when you let your gutters leak, downpipes overflow, and show you the damage it gradually does. Now this barn hasn't got a downpipe attached, so you've got a gully up here, which I will just show you, which is up there, and you can see the water's just coming down and gradually causing so much damage. Now you might be wondering, why is it important? If you let water gradually do this over time, again and again and again, it's going to cause damage to your foundations, it's going to seep in damp into your walls, and none of that is good. If you notice there's algae patches or damp patches on your walls, or you notice on the flower bed there's basically like a gaping hole where water's just continuously splashing and dripping and overflowing, that is going to start causing you problems. So you want to either give us a ring, or if you can get it to yourself safely, reattach it or unblock that downpipe and stop stuff like this from happening. And it's simple, easily avoidable, and saves you a lot of money in the long run, not having to sort out a brick wall because it's completely damp and sodding through. Now we've got another extreme example here, why gutters are actually so important for a building. So this particular building has no gutters. They've fallen off, they've got old, so they disappear, they don't exist anymore. And this is the damage. This is the damage it's causing. It's literally rotten this cladding on this building from just years of constant water overflowing. And I know it's a boring subject and we don't think about gutters. We really wanted to try and emphasise the importance to people about your gutters, because when we get the rain like we do at the moment, our phone doesn't stop ringing, people are getting water in places they shouldn't be, and it's usually because of a simple blockage, a simple bracket that's come apart, and water's just finding its way in. And it's the same with the gullies on the roof, with the moss. You know how I talk about that quite a lot. You know, that is another common problem where if we just remove that moss, no water's finding its way in. And not waking up 3 in the morning with water pouring in through your ceiling. And we stress it so much because we want this to be completely avoided altogether with a simple annual checkup, getting those gutters cleared, making sure they last as long as possible, because this is the outcome when it's just neglected. And it can easily be done if you've got quite a big house and there's a particular side you never go around and you just don't check up on it. You may find gutter's been leaking for years and it's actually causing substantial damage to your house. So it's good to just every now and then, especially when we know the rain season's coming, do a little walk around, do a 360, make sure there's no leaks, no damp patches, and if you've got cladding, obviously no cladding's getting damaged. Even if you've got wooden fascias, they are particularly important to make sure your gutters are in good nick, because they're made of wood and a lot of the time they're not even painted. They will rot through gradually and you won't know about it till your gutters start falling down because the screws aren't holding in anymore. So just simple little things like that, just keep an eye on those leaks, making sure there isn't any. You don't have to go outside in the pouring rain, just when you come home from work, have a quick glance, but what did Johnny say? Oh yeah, look for the damp patches, look for the drips, look for any pools of water sitting in the flower beds, and those little, simple little things can, avoid you having problems down the line. Now we're on the same building, but we want to talk about ground floor level foundations, and we just want to identify when it might be causing you a problem. So now we've obviously got some green algae sat here on the wall, which is a clear indication of water constantly splashing on this wall and letting algae thrive because it's so damp. You can see it's literally, this was tarmac, so it's washed that away, and not only that, but the foundations, I can literally get my fingers straight underneath, and that is literally from constant erosion from water overflowing and hitting the wall, hitting the ground. And if this is left over time and time again, this is only going to get deeper and much worse. So just a really good prime example of what to look for to make sure your foundations aren't getting damaged. When we're talking about foundations, it's actually really important to keep on top of, because if you come to sell a property and they do a survey and they find these particular things, if it's left unchecked, it will slowly start to compromise the integrity of the building. If it's a deep enough depth of a hole that's starting to get washed underneath your foundations, walls are going to start moving. If you've got render, it's going to start cracking. and it can all be avoided from that annoying leak just being patched up and sorted, or that downpipe being cleared out. You know, for no more than a couple of £100 you can save yourself thousands, because there'd be nothing worse if you come and sell a house and they're like, yeah, you've got your walls are moving, and you're like, why is that? Oh, because the downpipe's been overflowing and I've ignored it. So remember, do a 360 every now and then, check those gutters, make sure there's no leaks, and stay on top of it. Right, so here we got a perfect example of rising damp. So the fall on the gutter's got to be absolutely bang on, otherwise, as you see on this situation here, this gutter is now lower this end compared to the downpipe end. So the fall isn't correct, and what's happening is water's now going to congregate on this end of the gutter, which is obviously causing all this damp, and it's actually started to erode the brickwork off, which is quite crazy. But if we raise it a little bit so the fall's correct, oh look at that, straight away that leak stops, which is why sometimes it's not a complicated fix. On this occasion it isn't, so this bracket just needs a little bit of raising so the waterfall goes straight down to the downpipe, problem solved, and then we avoid rising damp, damaged walls. Simple as that. Now I know this is a really extreme example, but this is just to get the point across that if gutters aren't working properly, you might as well not have them, because if it's left long enough, the damage it does. Like, what? Like, it's gone. Like, there is a huge hole here, there's moss, there's algae, the wood is, well, look at that, it is completely rotten through. Now let's say that's a fascia board on the back of your house that you don't ever look at, and it's got no paint on it and the water is just exposed to it all the time. That is gradually what it does. It will just rot it through, and then before you know it, you've got to change all the faces over on your house, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to have to be putting scaffolding up and spending all this money when we could spend it on a holiday to Barbados or wherever. But that is what happens. That is solid wood, completely rotten through. So here's another great example, and you usually find this sort of thing happens right in the middle of your property. You maybe have had it where you just get that leak bang in the middle around the back of the house. Now this is usually because all the muck congregates in the middle and then weighs down the joint, and as you can see, this is full of leaves already, and God, the leaves haven't really started to fall properly yet, but it's started to bow absolutely heavily. So once we relieve this, it should stop the leak. I'm not convinced the seal has actually gone. It is just because of the sheer weight pressing down on it. But you can see it's been doing it for some time, because you've now got moss literally growing in the joints, which is another good indication that you've had a leak. So if you do notice moss growing in the joints on your brackets on your guttering, it's usually a good indication that water's getting through, because what does moss love? Moisture, water, and all that stuff. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate all the support, all the kind words and recommendations from all of you. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and just to hone in on the signs and symptoms, if you need our assistance or you need any advice, you want to be looking out for leaks on the joints of the gutters, overflowing downpipes, damp patches on your walls. Any cracks in the wall can potentially highlight water that's continuously leaking on the walls. Anything like that. Even if you see a little flower or plant growing out your gutter, I know it might look pretty, but it's not a good sign. But until next time, thanks so much, take care everyone, and we'll see you soon.